Right. So last week we were talking about the seed of the woman and the seed of the man, and just a little review of that. We all know who the seed of the woman are. Okay, seed of the woman or the word is the same thing, and the word is the scriptures, what we have to read. It's the teaching, the instructions, and every word in the scriptures that we have that the Creator speaks or he has someone speak for him is his word, okay? And his basics are, he made a commitment with the children of Israel, a contract with them, a marriage contract with them. At Mount Sinai, went out of the cloud, out of the fire, he spoke the Ten Commandments to them. And the children of Israel said, all you say we will do, which they accepted that ketubah, that marriage covenant with him. So today, we are still obligated as the children of the creation of the world, whether we're out of the house of Israel or out of the 10 tribes or the 12 tribes, 13 tribes, however many ever you want to count, we are still obligated to that command that he made with those people when they said, all you say we will do. So we're still locked into that, but we have to make that commitment too. So his commitment is the 10 Commandments, okay? That was his marriage vows to him. It's very simple. The first 4 commandments are about how we worship him. And the last 6 are about how we get along with our brothers and sisters and how we work. So that's still there today. That's his words, that's his truth. The words, the commands and the instructions that he gave for the priest are for them, but there are several things that they have that they gave to us that we need to do. Of course, we don't do the slaughterings or the blood offerings or whatever. We had that blood offering with Yeshua, so we're not crying. And we also have to remember that him talking to the children of Israel when he was bringing them through the wilderness and bringing them back to taking them into the land was predicated on when they were in the land. So what we're doing today when we do tabernacles, which we just did, we're doing a rehearsal. It's a rehearsal. It's a reminder of his covenant with us. When we do Passover, it's the same thing. When we keep his Sabbath. Now remember, the Sabbath was made for man. Man wasn't made for the Sabbath. So we have to remember these things. So that's his word, okay? That's the word. That's the seed of the woman. So we also went over the seed of the serpent, and we came to Cain right away. And I was just kind of talking a little bit before we started I was looking at the thing that said in the process of time, or in the certain time, Cain brought a offering. Well, you can translate, it translates, if you go and translate those letters, those words out, it's actually at the end of time or the end of days. So when I was looking at that, the prophecy and the curse that he put on Cain will probably take place again in the end times. You've got to remember there was a war going on between not really a war that we've seen, but there was something going on between the two brothers. So we don't know if it says Cain brought an offering and Abel also brought an offering. Well, did Abel have the offering first and then Cain tried to copy him, or did they both have an offering? But we do know that Abel's was accepted and Cain's was not. As we read into the scriptures, we need to look at who the seed of the serpent is, okay? So Cain, it gives a genealogy of Cain. And in there's a gentleman that made tools or weapons of iron and bronze. But he also I think also that refers to the things of bronze and metals could have been idols too, okay? So going into it, when we get to Noah, I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit. We never got into all of the genealogies of everything with the seeds going down through history, but Noah was certainly the seed of the woman. Okay, we'll call it the good seed and the bad seed. It's easier. Okay, so the good seed went through Noah, and when they landed and they do the genealogy of them, you notice that it says Shem, Japheth, and Ham, or Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And so you're looking at that, and you would think that Shem was the firstborn. Because when you look at Japheth and Ham, you're going to see the genealogy of the bad seed. If you look through it, everything that came down through those two are technically the nation separated from around what Shem was, okay? The Canaanites came out of it, the Cushites, the Egyptians, and all the Mithrites, all those people came out of those two men. But as we get down to Shem, they do Japheth and they do Ham, and then they do Shem's genealogy, okay? It specifically states that Shem, the younger brother of Japheth. So we know that Shem was not the firstborn. And I don't want to assume anything, but I would say that he was probably the secondborn, okay? And Scripture will go along with that when we start looking. Abel was the second. Jacob was the second. Yitzhak, Isaac was the second. So when we look at that, we got this the seed of the woman went through Shem. And it went all the way through, and it went to a gentleman, Eber, which means to cross over, who was the lineage of Abraham, okay? Abraham. The bad seed went with the other people. But when we get to Abraham and we go through his genealogy and we get to Isaac, we have Ishmael and Isaac. Well, Ishmael, if you read on Ishmael, when he has a blessing too, if you read in there when Hagar was put into when she left and she thought she was going to run away from Sarai, that a messenger met her and blessed her and told her that her seed would be numerous. And then there was a blessing or a prophecy about Ishmael. He would be a wild man, okay? He would be not a nomad, but he would be one that was always in conflict with other people, okay? On the other hand, we have Isaac. Isaac was the good seed. When we go through Isaac and you get Esau and Jacob, Esau was a man of the field. He was a hunter. And if you look at the blessing that he got, now, Jacob got the blessing of the firstborn, although he's the second. He got everything. He was blessed with everything, okay? Esau got a blessing that, yes, he would be numerous, but he would be a wild man as well, and he would be in conflict all the time, and he was a warring person. If you read up on him, he is a warring person. In fact, the bad seed in him, if you want to know where Islam came from, it did not come from Ishmael. It came from Esau's line, Edom. Muhammad was an Edomite. And he was also a warring group of people, okay? Now, when we say Edom, Esau could have been way gone, but Edom, the seed of Esau, right? They went to battle, and they would go to battle and go out and go to villages, and they were marauders, right? Well, there was other marauders out there that did the same thing. Edom at one time was really besieged by these people, and they fled to a neighboring tribe, the Adalamenes or the Adalalites or something like that. I can't pronounce it real well, but it's the Adalalites, okay? And the reason I'm bringing this up, I did a little bit of history on this. if you go to Jacob, they want to jump ahead to Yehuda when he left the tribes and he went off on his own and he had a partner and he went up into Canaan and he met a Dulamite. I'm trying to, and there's several times in the scriptures where you get these names mixed up a little bit, or they sound alike but spelled a little different. So I'm still investigating it, but it's really something that you need to know, that out of the tribes that Edom went to, the villages they went to, and they migrated in there and they stayed in there, was also taken into captivity along with Israel when the Romans came in, okay? And out of that, because the Romans picked people to put in charge of things, and they picked a guy named Herod to be king up in Israel. Sound familiar? The king that wanted to kill Yeshua, the new king, when he heard about it. It's just, it might be a little bit off, but I think there's something to it. I'm still investigating it. So if anybody wants to do a study on that and find out a little bit more about it, it would be interesting. But it looks like he was actually from the tribe came out of Edom, which shows you how the seed works. Okay. So anyway, going back to the seed thing. So you had Ishmael was the bad seed, Isaac the good seed, Esau the bad seed, and Jacob the good seed. Now we come to the tribes of Jacob, the 12 tribes. Are they all the good seed? Think about it. Think about how many times there was problems within the tribes, especially when they were coming out and going through the land and going through the wilderness and coming into the land. You had several people that were singled out that started problems. Okay, Balak was, Korah was one, that we had the Korah rebellion, and he was even a Levite. He was of the house of Levi. So was the good seed in him when he was doing what he was doing, to go against Moses, to go against Aaron? No. That seed he took, whether, we don't know how that happens, but we know the Creator's in charge. Somehow that seed was planted in him and he became that way. It's the same way when they went into the land. Throughout the history of man, there's always been this rebellion. And when we look in the scriptures, when you talk rebellion, you're talking about the rebellion against the Creator. When you're against the Creator, you're against His Word. You're against His seed, His Word, His teaching and instructions, okay? So you can see it in Joshua. He has problems. What did they do when he went in and they took down Jericho, and they said, Creator said, all the gold and all the silver goes into the treasury of the Levites, into the treasury of the tabernacle, which they were still moving. The first one that right away somebody violated that. They took it and they buried it under their rug. It was the house of Yehuda. Now I'm not telling you the house of Yehuda is all bad people. Okay, we know that. They're not all the bad seed, but the bad seed was in there. It was in the house of Ephraim, who was the leader of the northern tribes. It was definitely in Benjamin. So, and Ephraim was the leader. Benjamin was that the uncle kind of thing. But there was problems with the tribe of Benjamin. It was one time all the tribes were against him. They all got together to conspire against him. But they all conspired back to get him back on track again. But my point is this, it was pretty obvious that going through there, the firstborn was always the bad seed. But when we get to the tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes, actually you'd have to have 14 tribes, because you have Manasseh and Ephraim would be the tribe of Joseph, but they would be split off. You could even say you had, I don't know if we don't have any record of Joseph having any other people, but My point is this: the bad seed got intermingled into the house of Israel. We know that because if it wasn't, we'd all still be in the land, in the promised land, okay? But we're not there. So we know that there's something. Now, we come to all of these, at this point in the world, and you start looking at what happened to mankind. Now, remember when I said back in the beginning that he wanted to create man in his own image and likeness? And the Creator was the Creator, okay? But he also was a lover of his people. And he gave the command to man to be fruitful and multiply and have domain over the world. Problem was, he never gave man the domain over other men, okay? He didn't say, you're going to have kings, you're going to have this or that. He was the king, and that's what he set out. Now, I'm not saying he changed his plans in any way. I think he's on the plan that he made from the beginning, and it'll go all the way to the end. And he's just trying to give us clues of how what the end is just like the beginning, or the beginning is just like the end. There's going to be turmoil out there, and we're stuck in the middle of it. So look at it where we're at today. We are the big Satan, according to the United States. America is the big Satan, according to Islam. So where's Islam fit into this? Are they a good seed or a bad seed? According to them, we're the bad guys, but according to the scriptures, Islam is the bad seed. There's so many religions out there that we look at that are absolutely against the Creator's word, against that scripture. And Satan, the bad seed, the controller of that, has a way of putting things out there. It's not always about murder. We know that John says, or Yeshua said, that the devil was a murderer from the beginning, right? He also says he was a liar from the beginning. Several places in the New Testament, you're going to see the reference that he was either a murderer or a liar. You see it in 1 John chapter 3. Then when John's going through, he's talking about in the beginning that he was a murderer and he was a liar, and he's a liar all the way through. He's always been a liar, okay? So what did he do with Eve in the garden? He didn't tell her an all-out lie. He just kind of mixed it up a little bit to kind of put a little bit of untruth into the truth. Okay? So what do we have today? We have the same thing all over the world. So, you know how many religions there are? I don't know them all, but you know what the number one religion is in the world? It's Christianity. They're 28% of the religious organizations is Christianity, and they have 2.1 million people in it, okay? And that takes all branches of Christianity. Islam is second. They have 1.9 billion people, and they're the second largest. The third largest is Hinduism. They have about a billion people. Do you know what the fourth one is? The fourth one is unaffiliated. 24%, 23% of the world is unaffiliated. They have something, but they're not affiliated with anybody. I think we could actually be there in part of that group, because there's a lot of people out there that are just there, but maybe they don't have a name behind them. So my ministry was Seekers of Yah, of Torah-based Hebrew roots Messianic ministry. It's kind of a long name. But I was trying to make sure that they didn't, because every time we went into prison, they thought we were Jewish. So they wanted to stick us with a rabbi or something. So we had to make sure that we would, that we were different. So, and we were, and we went through a lot of prisons. And I'm still out there with them that they know we're not Jewish, but they know it's a ministry and they know it's a Torah-based ministry. So they have to know something about the scriptures if they want to know what the Torah is, okay? And they have to know the scriptures if they want to know what the Hebrew roots are. Anyway, it's pretty amazing when you think about the fourth one is, I'm pretty sure it's the fourth one, might be the third one in Hinduism. I think it's the fourth one. And then after that, I believe it's Buddhism. And then you go down the line, I think it's, there's a lot of religions in there that are mixed. They have Shinto or something like that, a Japanese religion. They have some African religions that are very large. But the total percentage of them is almost 6 billion people that have some affiliation with some kind of God. I'll put it that way. And I don't like to use the word God because that covers too much. So Yahuwah's people are in that group, okay, somewhere. Okay, and they're not recognized because Judaism is one of the smallest ones out there. I think they said there's 15 million in Judaism, okay, and they're down there like 9th or something like that, or 10th. Or they're maybe not even in there, in the top 10. But they say there's 15 million that practice Judaism in the world. And this is the world, not in Israel, okay? Israel only has 11 million people in their country. And they are not all practicing Judaism because they have Arabs in there. They have Christians in there. They have Hindus in there. They have everybody. They're just like, they're almost like us. They got everybody in there. And so when you think about that, I think there's, 8.1 or 2 billion people on the earth right now? So that means there's a couple billion people out there that don't have any affiliation, maybe a little bit more than a couple billion, that have any type of religion in them. So that we'll put them in the atheism thing. And I think they would be a larger group than the Christian organization, the 2.1 billion people. The reason I'm saying this is, where are we in that picture? And the things that we're getting anti, and I put it this way, anti what we look at, the word, the seed, the good seed, the word, the scriptures that we study, the covenants and commandments, the feast days, the every one of the mikvahs that we have the Sabbaths, we have the feast days. They're all there for a picture of how he's going to return, how he got started, how he took them out of the land, and how he's going to he put them in the land, took them out of the land, and he's going to put them back in the land where the kingdom's going to be. The kingdom's going to be in the land of Israel, or the land promised to Abraham, which is huge. Euphrates to the Mediterranean, the Arabic Sea, all the way up to Lebanon. That's a big chunk of property. So we're sitting here looking at, and he says that out of this group of people, the ones that believe in him, that have the testimony, that have the covenants and commandments of Yahuwah, and have the testimony of Yeshua, are his people, okay? Can't have one or the other. You have to have them both. 3 or 4 or 5 times. It's 2 times very specific in Revelation 12:17 and Revelation 14:12. It's very open. In chapter 3 of Revelation, it's also in the Philadelphia church, it says that. The ones that have, he says, I know that you have the testimony of Yeshua and keep the covenant commandments of the Creator. So, okay. So we know that that's who they are. And Yeshua says it. I'm the Aleph and the Tav, and then he puts into point that these are his people, those ones that have the testimony, his testimony, and the commandments of Yahuwah. So that's what we are. We have the teaching and instructions of the Creator, the Word, the good seed, And we have the testimony of Yeshua, who was the good seed that came in to bring that word and to make it a living proof of what the Creator wanted. Somebody that was sinless. We know none of us are going to fit that picture. But that's what Yeshua come. He come proclaiming the kingdom of heaven here on earth, but it's the kingdom of heaven here in the land. And the reason they put earth on there, because the word eretz covers anything that has to do with earth, dirt, dust, property, whatever, okay? So it's up to the translators to put it right. But if you want to do it right, it would be of the land. So the kingdom is in heaven in the land, but it's going to be here on earth. So we know where that kingdom's going to be. And I would think that if we're diligently, and none of us are perfect, if we're diligently pursuing the covenants and commandments and the teaching and instructions of the Creator, and we have the testimony of Yeshua, which I think everybody in this room does, I'm pretty sure we all do, then you're going to be in that kingdom, okay? I don't think it's going to be a very large amount of people if we keep looking at it the way it is. But at some point in time, we're going to be a major group of people that everybody will recognize. It's called the Great Ingathering. And I don't know if you've heard Dave's teaching on it, but there is a Great Ingathering. It's like a picture from counting the Omer to Shavuot, the celebration of the Great Ingathering, okay? The 2 loaves of bread, the house of Israel, the house of Jacob, or of Yehuda. Big, heavy loaves of bread. I think they somebody figured it out. They weigh 10 pounds a piece or 20 pounds a piece, something like that. These are huge loaves of bread when you look at the recipe. But it's wants you to know that there's going to be a lot of people. And out of that people is going to be the great apostasy. The ones that know him and have studied him and have lived by it are falling away from it. And this is the picture of the end times. And then, of course, after that, it's when Yeshua returns. But I don't think that's in our time now. I don't see how many people recognize us as anything. You know, the guys in the prison that had the zit seats on, I had one group of them in the prison that they wanted zit seats, and they kept bugging me, where do we buy them? How can we get them? I says, well, if you read the scriptures, it says you're supposed to make for yourself a tassel with a blue thread in it, okay? And so they did. They would take a towel and they would pull a string out of a towel. All the towels had a blue stripe on each end, and then it was white towel, and they would take 1 or 2 strands out of a towel. They're not always the same towels because they had to go in, right? And they got their white threads, and then they did the blue threads, and they all had tassels. And the guards call them the string people, or the string boys. That was pretty good. But it was funny because there was a couple of the guards wearing tassels down there. So, and so they not only gathered other people into the group, they even had on one yard, I had a captain that would call me in every time, and he'd have a question about me and have his Bible open. He'd have a question, and he had his Hebrew flashcards in his pocket, you know. And I had another guy that he says, I want to get that book, Fossilized Customs. I said, well, nope, you can't do that. Just tell me where to get it. So I noticed there was a couple of those guys who were reading. On that 1 yard, just one group of people went so far as to actually get the COs, you know, actually got those people involved in it, and they were starting to follow it. So it's just the word, okay? But so that word's out there. But when you look at what's out there today, Islam is not just trying to wipe out Israel, the state that they call Israel. They're against the Jews, okay? And I'm thinking that if they're saying that America is the big Satan and Israel is the little Satan, there might be a clue in there that there might be a few million of those people that they want to wipe out in the United States, okay, and the rest of the world. Besides that, Islam is also fighting against each other. There's so many branches of it. It's just like Christianity. They have so many people in their troops, and they're fighting against each other. You have I think that's the Sunnis, and I know the Sunnis are the mean ones. Are they the biggest or the? There's two big ones, and then there's branches all over. So they're just like Christianity, okay? So I'm up here speaking, and nobody gave me any authority to be here, okay? John said it was okay, but I said it was okay for John to teach too. So I think my authority is just from me wanting to know what the scriptures is about and wanting to share it with people. That's what I've been doing for 25 years, okay? So 20 years. So anyway, knowing that, I don't know it all. I don't know it all, but I'm very, very mindful to, I'm always asked questions. I used to ask so many questions at that one church that they told me not to come back. I guess why? So the guy told me, he says, you can't come in here unless you're wearing a kippah. I said, why? He said, well, you got to have a kippah to cover your head when you're in here. I said, why? He says, because you got a talit. I said, I don't wear a talit. He said, well, you got to have a talit on. If you have a talit on, you got to wear your kippah. And I said, well, just a minute, I got to go to the bathroom. And he said, well, it's a good thing you don't have your talit and kippah, because you'd have to take it off and fold it up and put it down, because you can't go in there unless you got it, because you'll dirty it, you know. It's like, where in the heck? I said, where's that in the scriptures? Where's this at? And then so after so many months of doing that, they didn't ask me to leave. They said, why don't you just not come back? And it was okay, because I learned a lot there. I learned a lot of things that I shouldn't be doing, but I also investigated the things that we should be doing. And that's the only authority I have. And everything I tell you is, I don't want you to say, thus saith Yahuwah, because I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, thus says John Shaver, okay? And anybody that would say that, Yahuwah, thus say Yahuwah, or thus say me, or whatever, you got to be careful about that, okay? Because if you say, well, I'm not going to say that. But where does man, in all of these religions on the world, where do they get their authority? They all have authority from other men. Isn't that amazing? What could go wrong with that? So I was looking at this. Do you know what the richest church, singular church, it's a Catholic church. It's a church, the German Catholic Church, or the Catholic Church of Germany, is the richest church in the world. That singular church, okay? The second one, the Latter-day Saints, right behind them, okay? The Latter-day Saints don't even give Yeshua the deity. I know, because I was in there and I studied it, and I had the Book of Mormon and read it. That book was, that whole thing, the Book of Mormon, if you look at it, it was plagiarized by a book that was written clear back in the days of the Greek historians. And somebody wrote a book about this angel Moroni and so I think that's how I think that whole church is plagiarized, but I know for a fact it is. But look at what they have out there in the world. They're everywhere. They have, that when a kid's 14 years old, they start going to elder seminars in the morning. They have to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning before they go to school for an hour of teaching, brainwashing. In fact, when I left the church in 1970 or 71, I woke up one morning and said, I'm not going anymore. My ex-wife was a teacher for the kids. She said, well, what am I going to do? I teach the kids. I said, well, my kids aren't going in there anymore. And so she finally quit too, because she, but anyway, my point was this: I quit, and I learned more about it after I quit than when I was in it, because like everybody, I started looking and you can find all this information about everything about it. So, but where'd they get their authority? You know, some from fruitcake out there that got the idea actually is what it was all about, if you really want to know. The guy that's there, this Joseph Smith, got kicked out of the, what do you call that? The Masonic Lodge, because he was trying to hit on all the ladies in there, all the guys' wives. So they kicked him out, so he made his own lodge. And then he turned it into a religion, which the Masonic Lodge is pretty much a religion. If you know about them, they have the pillars of Solomon's pillars in there. And they have a big throne in there. And I don't know who their god is, but they got one in there, and they go through a ritual and all this stuff. The best people on earth, the Fraternal Order of Oaks is the same way, or of Elks is the same way. So anyway, all of those things are religious backgrounds that have levels to get to the top. And some man is going to tell you when you reach your level, right? So we have a task at hand against the children of Israel, and we're all children of Israel. The Christians out there have half of what they think they believe or know. The testimony of Yeshua, you know, they have half of it, if at best half of it. But so many things were changed in the scriptures. Do you know that there's never any history, archaeological diggings all over the land of a city named Nazareth until 108 years after Yeshua was put on the stake. Okay? So, where did that come from? There was a Catholic or an Alexandrian priest that dedicated a piece of land to the Church of Nazareth, or to Nazareth, and he built a church there. And of course, it went to the wayside, but that's where the city Nazareth came from. Jesus, their Jesus, was a Nazareth, right? He was from Nazareth. Yeshua came from Bethlehem, right? He dwelt in the area of the Galilee, which they call Nazareth. The Bible does. But in the scriptures, it says, if it's written properly, it's the area of the Galilee. But if you go to Isaiah 11:1 and you read about the branch, 11, chapter 1, and it says the branch and the stem or the branch is a Natsar, which means Natsar, not Nazrite, it's Natsar. If you read Romans and you see that Paul was declared the rebel leader of that bad bunch of peoples, some say Nazarene, but it should be Nazarenes, which would have been the branch of Yeshua. Yeshua was the branch. He was teaching, and they were the branch. So that's why they had that name in there, and somehow it got changed to Nazareth because, you know, you got the Church of Nazareth. But anyway, that's just something, and you can look it up. You can try to study it out, and you'll find, I'm pretty sure you'll find, they said the oldest settlements they had in there was like 4,000 years or 5,000 years before and I don't know when they were doing the digs on it, but that's how far back they said that there was anything there, and they thought that was a pagan area because all these skulls and everything were laid in the dirt in a certain order or something. I don't know. It's pretty hard to follow, and you're just taking a guess from the archaeologists, but I don't know how to age date anything, but that's what they're saying. But there was never anything until Nazareth because they found a plaque that said in the year 108 that this was a site of Nazareth. And it was about this church that they had, the Church of Alexander, that one of the priests put there. So let's go up and find out how come we got Christianity. Where did that come from? If you go back to Constantine, who was a prime example of the bad seed, he killed his mother, he killed his brother, he killed his children because he was afraid they were going to take his place. So he was a killer, all right? And he was a liar, and he was the leader of them, and they were worshipers of Mithra, the sun god. And so he was coming through somewhere back from a crusade or whatever they would call the going out in marauderies and whatever. And he seen the reflection of what he thought was a cross, from the sunlight hitting the water up in the sky or something. Oh, that's it. That's where the cross came from. And he decided that this is what we're going to do. This is what we have. This is the picture of Apollo, Apollo, which was the original sun god, and then his was Mithraite, and it's every one of them. The one that they had in Egypt their big god was a sun god. So everybody's had a sun god. Nimrod had a sun god. If you read about Nimrod and his little story of the queen and her husband get killed or something, comes back and fertilize her, and she has a son, all of that stuff. But that's all sun worship, okay? When the people went out of Israel and they went up into the northern, when they sent them out of Israel and pushed them up to the north, that's what they ran into, was all of those pagan worshiping out there. So Constantine declared that anybody that kept the Sabbath was a Jew, and that's where I don't know how they got the terminology about Jew. It's something about, I know it's got to be tied to Hebrew. But anyway, so anybody that's a Jew keeping the Sabbath, they're going to put a tax on them. Okay? And they can also kill them. It's okay if you kill them, So if you were keeping Sabbath, you were going to be taxed or going to be killed or whatever. So a lot of people quit doing that because they didn't want to get stuck with being that, right? So there's probably a lot of Yehudites out there that don't even know that they are Yehud, from the tribes of Yehuda. But anyway, Constantine started the Sunday worship. The sunrise service goes to that. When you read Yeshua coming out of the grave, said early on the first day. Well, let's go back. John did this teaching. He went in the ground on a Wednesday, right before the sun went down, because the Jewish law was they had to be buried, on that, before the sun went down. So they got permission, and they put him in the tomb that was already prepared for him, right before the sun went down on a Wednesday. So you had Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, 3 nights. You had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 days, And at the beginning of the first day, as the sun was going down, Yeshua came out of the ground. So it was early on the first day he came out, and he was there. It wasn't in the morning. It wasn't at sunrise. But because we have to put everything in a perspective, what were we talking about? Abstract things? Well, let's see. Our time starts, the new day starts at midnight. So early Sunday morning, it would be at sunrise. So now we have sunrise service, right? This is how man thinks. Boy, I'm telling you, when he gave us the mind to think and he wanted us to be creators, we created a lot of things. I mean, think about it. And some good. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good things that man has done. We're not riding horses and we're not walking anymore. We have cars and we have gasoline that you only have to pay $5 a gallon for, but we're blessed. The thing I'm trying to get at is man has made the situation that we're in today, in the world today, the way it is, It's not even abstract. It's an action. When they started creating, they created good things and bad things. They did spiritual things, but the spiritual things they did were the spiritual things that man thinks it's spiritual, not what the Creator did. And now you've heard John's teaching on the spiritual and the flesh, and the spiritual things are of the Creator. Well, man has made those spiritual things fit man. In fact, man has made the scriptures fit to man's liking. That's why we have all of those different religions out there. And those are who the enemy is out there. And I'm not talking, I'm not saying the Christians are killers and they're going to kill everybody. But if they're not with us, they're against us. Isn't that what he said? So I have brothers and sisters. I had Jehovah's Witness, Baptists, Methodists. Those are good people. Well, they're hard-headed. But anyway, but they're there, and they all think I'm crazy, right? My sister, when she says, I can't believe you don't do Christmas. I said, well, it's pretty easy. Just read the scriptures. Well, what do you mean? He was born at Christmas. I said, no, he wasn't. Judy, that's all crazy stuff. She says, oh, but look at all the fun we had when we were kids. And I said, when we were kids and we were stupid and we didn't know better, right? That's what we did. It was fun. It was. I remember we had good times. I mean, it was crazy. Our house, there was 9 kids, and we had 2 aunts and uncles that had no children. So we had 3 moms and 3 dads. And man, we got piled with stuff, okay? It was really good stuff. And it was always fun. Thanksgiving, same way. Christmas, Easter, everything. Big time, But we were kids. There's still a lot of children out there walking around in their 50s and 60s that still haven't figured out what the truth is. So what we're doing is probably setting an example, hopefully. I try to set an example for people, and probably 3 times a day I slap myself, because not literally, but spank myself, if you want to put it, because I'm doing something that I don't want people to think that this is who I am. So I'm really gripping with that, but I'm still trying every day to do it. And that's what the Creator's looking at. He's looking at your heart, trying to be the way he wanted you to be. He wanted man to subdue the world. He wanted them to take care of the earth, take care of the animals, take care of whatever it is that we are supposed to take care of. But he didn't want us to take over, but he knew we would. And he's probably up there. Well, he doesn't have to, because he's everywhere, wherever he's at, wherever we're at, he's there. So, but the thinking is, he's looking at mankind, that we're taking the path that he designed for what mankind was going to be and what's going to happen and where it's at in the end. When we look at the end, a new heaven and a new earth here on, a new heaven and a new earth. And I really believe there'll be a new heaven and a new earth, because that's what he says. There's no reason to doubt it. But there's going to be a lot of people still on the earth that are not of the persuasion, but they're still going to, at the white throne judgment, as long as their name is still in the Lamb's book of life, okay? And that thing with the slain Lamb's book of life, if grammatically, it's the book of life is the object, the slain lamb is in there, and it's just telling you that Yeshua, the slain lamb, that's his book of life. And the book of life that you hear all the way through the scriptures is the same book of life, okay? Yeshua and the Creator are one, and so that's their book of life. So that book of life, if your name's in it and it hasn't been blotted out, and you haven't went up in the first resurrection, then you're still going to be judged. So our Christian brothers and sisters, because they do believe in Yeshua, and they do have somewhat of his testimony. They have the real testimony there, but they have teachers that are telling them what things mean. Like in Galatians, when it says, let no man judge you of wine, of drink, or food. You know what that means? You can eat any dang thing you want to, because he made all food. Oh, and when he did the sheet coming down with all those dirty things in it, he made all things clean, right? That's what they teach, so it's okay that you can eat anything you want to. But they got to remember, you can eat any clean food. I try telling them, I said, define food. Because if you say pig's not in that category of a defined food. But anyway, that's the things that, those are just some of the things that are teaching out there. So when I wanted to get on this bad seed thing, it got to be a huge thing. Once you got to the tribes of Israel, and you're going out of the land, and you see the things like, what's his name? One, the rebellion of Korah's rebellion. You can see even Miriam at one time and Aaron at one time were going against Moses, right? We're as good as Moses. That's a little bit of the seed in there trying to, to get their spot. But they were corrected and everything happened. But you notice Miriam was the first one to go, and then there was Aaron. But anyway, when you look at that and you're going into the land, even with Joshua in there, Joshua was exactly like Moses. The Creator talked to him like he did Moses. And he gave him instructions. He didn't say, I'm not saying face to face as he did with Moses, but he spoke to him. And he gave him commands for the children, and he gave commands on how to divide the land and who was to be in charge and how to do it. And he died before it was completed. And then the first thing you go to, and now we're still talking the house of Israel, the entire house, you go to Judges, and we have these judges that were bad, and then we had judges that were good. We had judges that were bad, and then we had judges who were the judges? The judges were usually priests, okay, of the house of Levi, of some things. There was only the hierarchy would have been the sons of Aaron, and then you had the sons of Aaron when they went into the land. Aaron was dead, so Eleazar was the next one, right? And then Eleazar's son was Phinehas. So that's what the lineage went from whoever the high priest was at the time of his death. It would be his firstborn. So you kind of lose track of them in there. So because the tabernacle was there, and people were over in the land spread out, and every land had so many priests in it. So, they spread the house of Levi all over out there. They even gave them areas where they had safe zones for people could run to if they were having problems, and have them judge what was going to be, what could be happening. So all of that time, they were talking about the house of Israel. You've got priests and you've got people that were good and bad. That seed going through different, it could be a father that was wonderful and his son takes over and everything goes to pot. That happened within the kings. Especially in the kingdom line, from David to Solomon. The first thing Solomon did, he wanted wisdom, and he got wisdom. And because he didn't ask for anything else, the Creator gave him all of these other things. So he ended up with all these women. He ended up with a house that he built. Said he built this for Yahuwah, a house of prayer, so all the people would come. And his prayer was, when they face this and pray wherever they are in the world, that you'll hear their prayers. And then the next thing he did was build a wall about it and didn't let anybody in there except the Jews. So he kind of went backwards on what he was promised. And then his son was worse than that. And that caused the king for the north that wanted to make sure nobody went down to the temple. So he made all these places for the people to go to give up offerings and to worship Jeroboam. And so that went to pot, and they got kicked out of the land. And then you go through the kings. So that seed jumped all the way through all of them. It doesn't matter what tribe they were in. That seed of the serpent was put into these people. However it happened, it wasn't that somebody come up and said, stamped them on the head, you're a bad seed, you're a good seed. It was something that influenced their lives, which would most likely have been the people that they never disposed of that were in the lands. And they were all idolaters. They all go back to Shem and Japheth, the seed of the serpent, okay, the bad seed. All of those tribes, all of those, Egypt, everywhere, all of that was the bad seed out there. So they grafted into some of this stuff. And so they naturally, hey, we have it. We've had people come here and then leave. We had a lot of people come here and leave. and go to different groups. But a lot of them go to different persuasions. They just give it up. Oh, well, I don't want that anymore. But there's a lot of people that do that with Christianity too. So this bad seed and good seed is out there. And it's not in your blood, it's in your heart. Okay? If you have a heart for the Creator and you have a heart for Yeshua, both the same, then you have the Word in you. And you're out there seeking, understanding. We're all here for the same reason. We're all here because we're of the house of Israel, okay? And there's millions of us out there in the world. I don't know how many are out there. But going through this whole thing, I could go back and start reading from this. I can give you some scriptures. If you can read several times, you can read it in Ezekiel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, that they speak about this particular thing, the bad seed, and how he's going to deal with them in the end. And he talks about how bad the children of Israel are, but he doesn't call them the bad seed. They're just bad children, okay? And he spanks them. But in the end, he says he's going to give us a new heart, a circumcised heart, one that will only love him and be the way he wants us to be, right? Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, you go through a bunch of the prophets say that, and the New Testament says that. Yeshua talks about the heart of the serpent and the heart of the Creator, his heart. So we're outnumbered, okay? And so it's not something to be afraid of, though, because you're going to be protected. I really believe that you're going to be protected. We're all going to be protected because he's watching over us. But we all have that thing that we can step out of and hit that bad seed pretty easy out there. We have to be leery of that. We have to be careful of that. And we have to realize that our brothers and sisters, genetically brothers and sisters, and the other people in the world, brothers and sisters, that are not following this, that could be. John, 6 or 7 years ago, was teaching in Calvary Chapel, and he realized it. I was lucky because I hadn't gone to church for 72 to 1998. I'd never been in a church except to get married. Okay, and I can tell you that in the middle of the night, and I caught a 10 or 15-minute glimpse of this guy that said, if you want to know about Revelation, you got to go to Genesis and read it, and read all the way through the scriptures. And when you do that a couple hundred times, you might understand what Revelation's about. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I couldn't sleep, so I found the scriptures, and I went around and found the Bible. I had a Bible because I had my combination of my floor safe in there. Nobody would look there for that, right? So anyway, and I started reading, and I could not get past the second chapter of Genesis. On the seventh day, he rested from his work. And I kept thinking the word Sabbath, 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 Sabbath. And then I realized it was in Exodus. I'd read the scriptures before, don't get me wrong. And so I went back and looked it up. And there it is right there, man. And I was stuck. And I couldn't get it out of my system. I don't think I slept for 2 days after that. I was so busy researching and calling and making phone calls and stuff and trying to convince Carol I wasn't a Jew. She even had her prayer circle of these Christian ladies they met every Wednesday. Well, she was calling them every day, and they were coming to the house, and they were all praying. Oh, I don't know what their prayer was, but make him know that he's not a Jew. And I'd come home, and she'd have all these things that they came up with, and I'd open the scriptures, and I'd say, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Right here, this. So the next day she would go, and this went on for 2 weeks. And finally, I come home one day, and I said, what's the matter, hon? I said, what's the matter? And she goes, oh, it was a bad day. She says, it was a bad day, but it was a good day. She said, but I'm just brokenhearted. And I says, why? And she says, all my friends told me that, because I started telling them about the Sabbath. And I started telling them about the 10 Commandments. And I was telling them about all the things you were teaching me. And they said, well, you're a Jew too. And so they disliked her or something. She was put out of the group. So she was a group of one. And that's how we got started in this. So that's how things happen. And everybody's got a story like that. Everybody's heard something that brought them to this. Amanda was lucky she had a dad that was very, very thorough in his thinking. A little bitty skinny guy, you know. And I love that guy, really. He was a world of knowledge in him that he would try to, you could get it out of him once in a while, but he was pretty knowledgeable. So she was lucky because she had a dad to do it. She probably didn't think she was lucky at the time. She probably realizes now how blessed she was to have such a wonderful father. But back maybe 20 years or 25 or 30 years ago, she might not have believed that, just like all of us, you know. I remember my dad laughing at me, and I went in one day and I started asking him a question. He says, hell, I thought you knew everything, just like that. And I go, what? He says, I thought you knew everything. We always arguing. And I said, well, Dad, I needed to know. And he says, well, finally, you came to me for some advice. He says, I'm finally a stupid old man giving this young kid advice. And I got to thinking about that. That's how we all are when we're kids. And like I said, there's a lot of children out there, 50 and 60 and 70-year-old and 40 and 35-year-old children that are stuck in these things. And it's all listening to partial, something that has a lot of truth, but also is filtered in with a lot of lies. And so when I hear these guys talking about, my sister told me, she says, well, my pastor went to the seminar. And I said, well, how many cemeteries did he go to? Because I says, all they teach is dead words. Right? So anyway, I'm sorry I've got scriptures there that we could have went in and read, and then we could be here for another hour or two. But I'm going to try to put some more of this together. And I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks, maybe 3. I'm getting surgery on one of my knees. And it's on my right foot, so I don't know how long it'll be before they let me drive. So I won't be able to see you for 2 or 3 weeks, okay? But my heart will be with you, and I'll be thinking of you guys all the time. And I hope that I didn't get too repetitious and too boring with this, but I know there wasn't a lot of scripture, and it's a lot of my feelings and what I've seen, but it's a lot about what life is, okay? And life is important because our life should be in the scriptures, okay? And it's written for us. This is a love story of the creator of the world with the love of his children, undying love of his children, unless they step over into the seed of the serpent, their undying love. It's a love story. It's an instruction manual. It's his words, and it's his heart that's in there. And his heart is for the children of Israel, all right? So with that, it's time to